me ask a question. How many people have heard the statement, it's just business, it's not personal in the workplace? You throw a yes in the chat if you're not on video. I appreciate those that are on video. Thank you. It's just a little interaction for me. Correct, Daniel. Here's the thing. People say it all the time in a business setting. It's from a fictional movie, people, about the mob. Stop quoting it like it's a business best practice. You are quoting a mob from a fictional movie. The reality is, it's personal. It is something that is in the workplace. It is because we're human, which makes it personal. The only person that helps when you try to say that statement is the person giving it. When I fire you, which I don't enjoy, I throw up every time I have to fire someone. If the words it's personal or it's not personal, it's just business, it is personal for that. They lost their job. They are figuring out what they're going to do next and where they're going to go. But we try to make statements like this, like, well, if we pull out all emotion, if we pull out everything that's personal in the workplace, then we won't have any problems. We won't have any conflict. We won't have anything happening in those areas. Well, is it working? No, because we are human. William, do you have a question? You've got a hand raised.
I was raising my hand as I heard that before.
Oh, okay, got it. Here, I'll lower it for you. So my name is Tricia Broderick. I tend to think about which of these topics I'm going to do kind of based on a few things. What I want to rant about, what I am comfortable to say that maybe somebody else isn't or couldn't be right now, and what I wish I had known. And I have a confession. You heard the bio. I've done a lot of different things. I am technically somebody people would say she just drinks the Kool-Aid because I've been in Agile for so long. But the reality is I don't like Kool-Aid. I like tequila. And I don't teach these things because I regurgitate things. It's because I've actually experienced it and what I've learned from it. So here's my confession. I like conflict. I do. I know some of you right now, you're like, I don't know if this call is going to be for me. I get it. I actually have more conflict when I can't have conflict, but I don't like drama. And there is a difference. So for those that are familiar with Miro, you will not be engaging in the Miro board, but I'm going to be sharing my screen. But for those that want to just look at the screen directly, versus for the recording, you're free to view the board. You won't be able to edit or do anything on the board, but you're free to view the board right there. I'm going to share my screen for everybody else because I never know who's going to need it or whatnot. So can you see a hidden frame right now? Okay, thank you. So in chat, what are some things that, or you can put drama versus conflict. What are some symbols that something might be conflict? What are some symbols that something's drama? And I've got to find my chat window so that I can see. Okay. What are some examples? And you can also shout it out too, and I can type it in for you. What are some things that if it's conflict versus if it's drama, what should we see? Gossip. So gossip fitting more in conflict or in drama? Drama. Okay. So we see some gossip. What else? Shouting. Where does shouting fall? Tears in both. Drama. Overreacting. Disagreement. Where's sarcasm fall? And where does politics fall? Name calling. Oops. There's still mutual respect in conflict. Trying to read them as I go. Drama, not listening. Raised voices, ego, being defensive, leaving the meeting. Sometimes that can happen. What was one more conflict one? Willingness to resolve. I like it. Here's the interesting thing. When we ask for this kind of information, we kind of generally can tell when we're in conflict versus when we're in drama. We sometimes get it confused because of that emotional part. We sometimes make an assumption like, Tricia, you're very, you've got tears and you're actually, I'm perceiving you as overreacting and not listening and being defensive because I'm passionate and I'm super engaged. This is actually not my drama stance. Me having tears, I'm actually still over here in conflicts. Me being, well, maybe a little listening and not defensive, but that can be just me being super passionate and engaged and just not skilled in that moment. What's really scary for me and what should terrify teams that work with me is not when I'm talking and being loud. It's when I stop talking that you should run. Everybody should be very afraid when I stop. As somebody said, leaves the room, right? When I'm in that place, that is when my drama is in full effect. And this is one of those things that we all have biases of what is deemed professional. We all have perceptions of what is acceptable and not. And the reality is everybody has different approaches and different dynamics. The trick isn't trying to make everybody a robot and emotionless. The trick is trying to really understand when it's impactful and how do we deal with it so that conflict doesn't become drama. Conflict's necessary. Why do we want conflict? I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. Why do we want conflict, but not drama? To move forward, alignment, to learn. I love these ideas, getting deeper. Here's the thing. I once had a VP assign me to a team as a Scrum Master. It was like one of my first Scrum Master positions. This was probably like, I don't know, 7-ish timeframe. And the VP's like, you're going to love this team. They never have any conflict. He was right about the team not having any conflict. He was wrong about loving the team because they were not a team. They didn't speak to each other ever. That is how they never had conflict. They didn't even know each other's names. Agilists talk about the wisdom of the crowd that we gain from different opinions and thoughts and experiences from others. That's how we get our best innovative knowledge work, is when we collaborate together. Because we're feeding off of each other. If you think that that's never going to cause conflict, well, that's just really cute. Like, of course it's going to cause conflict. Of course it's going to cause disagreements and challenges. The trick is keeping those conflicts and disagreements at a conflict level and not at a drama level. But how people engage in conflict is different. And so we have to be careful to assume and automatically assume that maybe the conflict we're dealing with is drama. Behavioral doesn't just make it drama. Here's actually what does. Okay. So I'm going to start sharing my screen again so people can see this and it's on the recording. So I'm going to go by a doctor named Dr. Cartman. He's not an Agilist. He has nothing to do with software. He he studies how humans interact with each other, how they relate to each other. And what he realized is he called something a drama triangle. So in every conflict that starts, there is somebody that's referred to as a persecutor. So this persecutor has a good intent. Let's say something's late to be delivered to the customer. A persecutor wants it to get resolved because they have good intentions. They're like, I don't want to disappoint the customer. I don't want to look bad, right? Like, I want to resolve this issue. But the way they go about it is in a very like persecution kind of way. It's all your fault. You're, how dumb can you be? How dare you lose this? Like, we're missing out on being able to deliver this. You're horrible, right? It's very judgmental delivery to resolve that problem, which means for every persecutor, there has to be a victim. Now, a victim, it's easy to say, well, if somebody misses the deadline, they were just horrible people and they were awful. But chances are that victim, they want to succeed. I have rarely met, do they exist? Yes, there are a few people out there, but rarely does anybody come to work and go, how can I make everybody miserable today and fail all day long? This doesn't happen. This is not what people want. They want to succeed. But when they're in this victim mode and they have a persecutor, there's an element of like, just a complete sense of hopelessness. It's not fair. You don't understand. You didn't know what I was dealing. Like there's all these excuses and reasons and frustrations and just feeling attacked. And then there's often a third role. It can be done by multiple people, called the rescuer role. And this rescuer role is somebody that's wanting to help, but the way they do it is a little sneaky. So, hey, persecutor, I know you're really good at being dependable for the customer. And, I get why this is so important to you, but, hey, don't tell the victim that I'm talking to you, but like, just next time, maybe be a little bit nicer. And then turning around and going over the victim like, hey, victim, the persecutor doesn't know I'm talking to you or anything. And clearly that persecutor was way out of bounds. But also, what can we do? So it's very almost still good intent of trying to help, but it's sneaky. It's slightly like everybody is not at fault and you're just trying to clean it up. So to make sure that we have this, I'm going to share a little, and I'm going to blow it up so that you can read it a little closer, okay? Take a second and read this scenario. Maybe put in a chat when you're done so I have some idea. Okay, I'm going to give it 10 more seconds and I'm going to scroll it out so that I don't make anybody sick while they're trying to read. It is a little so. It's like, Tom, somebody's like, how did you know what's happening at work? Okay. In chat, who do you think is the persecutor in this story? Zion, John, or Nisha? I see a lot of Johns. I'm watching if I miss Johnny. If I miss anybody, John, I see pretty Johns. Okay. Seeing Johns. This is also just to see if anybody's with me still. Who's the victim in this scenario? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of Zion so far. Okay, who's the rescuer? I've got a basketball person right there. Okay, I see a lot of Nishas. So this is definitely how the conflict started. When it was just a conflict, these were their roles. But who else is a victim in this story? Who switches a role to victim? So when Nisha is the victim, who's the persecutor when Nisha's the victim? Still John, right? In those cases. Who else is the victim? Does John ever become the victim? Zion can actually also be a persecutor for Nisha because, she was just helping. Does John ever become a victim in here? Right. So who's John's persecutor? Zion, be Nisha, right? And this is where it gets complicated. This is how a conflict, and then John tries to become the person trying to rescue things. This is how it becomes drama. When a conflict starts to switch roles, that's right, Frederick. When a conflict starts to switch roles, now you're in drama. The behaviors might be all similar or different things, but the problem is when you go to try to have a conflict conversation, which conflict conversation are you having? Are you having the one where Zion is the victim, or is John trying to have the conversation at the same time and they're both acting as the victim? Take a second and think about, you can go real world. You can go workplace. Whenever there's a big drama-filled conflict that seems unsolvable, everybody seems to be the victim because there's truth to that. But at one point, it's because there have been all these switches, all these swirls that have happened that now everybody's coming from that same position and saying, well, I'm the victim. I'm the victim. I'm the victim. And they're all right. Except nobody is owning when they were the persecutor. What happens if you're the victim long enough? You might just check out or quit. You jump up to this persecutor, like, I am no way. I'm going, right? You become the persecutor. It's, the rescuer often can become the victim. I was just trying to help, and now suddenly I'm being blamed for everything. These switches are so easy to happen. And these switches are what causes drama. The behaviors might all be similar, whether it was a conflict or a drama. Drama is unaddressed conflict. And when the switches are so bad, somebody put, I'm dizzy, right? When the switches are so bad, everybody's talking past each other because they're all coming from the space of I'm the victim or my good intent, what I'm trying to accomplish, instead of what do we need to resolve together? I'm going to pause here first for a second. Any questions first? Okay, here's your first challenge. Ready? And you don't have to share it with anybody, so you can be honest. I want you to note by yourself, not in chat, one conflict, current or past, where you feel you are the victim, and one conflict, current or past, where you had a part as the persecutor. And one, if ideally, and one where you were the rescuer, at least at some point during it. Don't worry if you switch roles. Just try to think of a conflict where you most identify in this role and that conflict. Could be current, could be past. And you're not going to share it with anybody, so you can be honest. And if you find that all of your conflicts are victims, dig deeper. And just as an FYI, you will get a copy of this PDF for this Miro board when you're done too. Okay, now for some of you, you turn your video off if you needed that. Let go of the conflict slightly, okay? Don't get lost in your conflict and start getting really upset that, right? Like just like breathe. Everybody take a deep breath, okay? Take a deep breath, breathe, it's okay. We're gonna keep going through this, right? But we gotta own that there are these roles. If you are interested, he has a book on this and he gives so many examples of how these roles can play out personally and professionally. For example, like I'll just highlight this as an example one. He has a story of how like two parents are fighting, right? And one of the parents is the persecutor, the other is the victim. And the child tries to be the rescuer by doing a bad job at school. Because then the attention will be, well, but then the child becomes the persecutor and the parents are the victim because the child is causing them all sorts of problems. And so they're trying to address that. But what they weren't addressing was the real root issue. And that's the first tip that I have here is, and I'm going to share my screen again so that you can see this, right? Is you really have to unpack the swirls to get to the original conflict to address. The more the role switches, the harder it is to do this. So things like in our world events of the us versus them, and there are so many, pick whichever one is your flavor of the day, okay? There are so many out there that are, which one are you talking about? Which swirl? Which spot? What position are you coming from? Is that the original conflict that needs to be addressed? Because as long as you keep dealing with the swirl ones, they will keep swirling because something was left unaddressed. So the faster you deal with conflict. So whenever everybody's like, well, I don't like conflict. Well, guess what? Avoiding conflict means you get drama. And it's harder because now who's talking from which roles? I'll give a personal example of this. As part of one of the communities that I volunteer for, I was trying, I was the leader, I was doing certain things, and I was very much playing this rescuer role. It was very much playing the rescuer role. Oh, some of the other people don't like this one individual and they don't think this person's doing a good job. I'm going to have side conversations. I'm going to defend the person behind the scenes, right? Like I was doing all these crappy rescuing type behaviors. Eventually, this person was not really fired because it was volunteer, but not continued. I got blamed. I became the victim. I was the evil person. I was the one that didn't, like all these things happen. Now suddenly I'm the victim because to the victim, I was the persecutor, not the rescuer. And it just kept swirling, and it swirled for years. I don't even know how to go back and fix this at this point because we kept letting it switch. So when you're in a workplace or personal, honestly, we have to realize that intentions rarely align with perceptions. I was trying to be helpful. To that victim, I was just another persecutor that set them up to fail. My intentions rarely align with the perceptions. And here's the other big one. It doesn't matter what my intentions were. It matters what the impact was. So this persecutor, their intentions might have been really, really good. But if your impact is to make somebody feel like they're hopeless and there's no point in anything, you got to work on your behavior or that relationship in particular. Maybe somebody else can handle exactly what you said and not feel hopeless, but this individual did. And impact matters more than intention. That doesn't matter whether it's conflict or drama or anything along those lines. This is about learning how to collaborate and work together. And so we have to start addressing conflict when we first set up in these positions. Because if we don't, and that swirl happens, it gets harder and harder and harder to unpack. What are, and I'm going to stop sharing for a second, in chat or shout out if you want, when people are a little nervous about addressing conflict right away, what are some tips people do, you have, others have heard, that help you to just go, this is just a problem to solve. This is just a problem to solve. Let's discuss it and not make it bigger than it actually is in that moment. What are some tips that people have? Start with a one-on-one conversation. It's easier to do that in a lot of cases because you can see, hey, I don't know if this is a big deal or not, but this is what's happening and I don't want it to get worse. And it's important. Our relationship's important. Our work, our team's important. And having that, doing it privately, I like the asking of the 5 whys, like what is going on here? What's my role in this as well? Determine a common goal is great. The drink together I once had a conflict initial conversation. I got promoted to director of development, and one of my top lead developers had never had a boss that actually told him no before. And one of my first days, I told him no, and I'm not kidding, he threw a tantrum. And so we went out to have a drink together, and the start of our drink together, we were calling each other names. But it actually ended really well in the sense of like, well, you better get used to hearing no, because now I'm going to say it to you on a regular basis just so you understand it. And these kinds of things. So, but honestly, to this day, he is now one of the closest working collaborative partners I have. And so the key here is understanding, what your common goal is, what your motivation to have that conflict is. If your motivation to have the conflict discussion is to put that person in their place, how's it going to work out? I mean, it might feel good for a split second, but usually you lose because then they feel like they're the victim and they stop realizing anything that they did that caused it. They just think you're being unreasonable or too sensitive or whatever it is that the reaction, natural human defensive reaction is going to come up. So my big thing here is often I say, when you're trying to address the original conflict, remember what your primary goal is. My goal is to have a strong collaborative relationship. My goal is to continue to keep trust. In order to do that, I don't want to have to not tell you that your snarky comment about being female in the tech world was appropriate. I want to be able to tell you that it hurt my feelings. And I want us to be able to work through that problem together because we're problem solvers. I'm not saying you're a horrible person. I'm saying that hurt me. And I'm human and I'm allowed to be personal. Okay. Questions up to this point? Okay. Now let's say we're all human. And Tricia, I know you told me to address the conflict right away, but I didn't. I was afraid. I was nervous. It was my boss, right? Like there are a lot of different reasons that might create that or cause that dynamic to happen. So if that's the case, one of the things that you as Scrum Masters or leaders in general can be doing is helping teams to learn how to engage in conflict in a way that's going to actually minimize the chance of the swirl. So there's a counter to this called the compassion triangle. And the compassion triangle says, instead of being a persecutor, so you still are going to have things that are going to annoy you that are not done, right? Something's not happening. You might be the persecutor as a Scrum Master, somebody else in the team might be doing it because they're upset about it, right? Like whatever it is, it might be the case. So instead of being the persecutor, be the challenger. Now, what might you think is the difference between a persecutor and a challenger? Where did my chat window go? What might be the difference between the persecutor and the challenger? The purpose, challenger asks questions, okay? They don't attack the person. They're not, you're getting rid of a little bit of the judgment in it. I'm currently writing a book with Diana Larson about the dangers of blame and shame. We like to think the judgment and that blame and shame are all about how to hold somebody accountable. But the problem is once you're in that judged place, it's really hard to stay creative. It's really hard to stay innovative. It's really hard to stay focused on the goal and not have a defensive reaction. So we want to challenge people because we want to believe prime directive, right? That people are doing the best that they can in the situation that they're in. So if that's the case, there's nothing for me to judge, but there is something for me to challenge. There is something for me to say, hey, we've got this problem. What can we figure out? And is there something in the system as a whole that we may be able to help minimize this happening to you again or to the client again? Not because of you. Because the reality is there's so many things out there that in knowledge work, there's always a reason. Even when there's not a reason, I'll find a reason. Because it's easy too. But that's not helping anybody with that. And in fact, we're wasting time on what we really need. Well, but Tricia, they should be able to just handle it. I mean, I'm just telling the truth. Yeah. So our brains, they're amazing, amazing, evil things. The research actually highlights that our brain sees and interprets and reacts to physical, I'm going to get punched in the face threat, the same as a social threat. So when people make the statement, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Neuroscience says that's crap. It's why when you get the crappy comment on your social media and you're upset about it, but you're up here in your brain going, why am I so upset? Who cares? I don't even like this person. I haven't talked to him since high school. And you're still upset about it. It's because your brain cannot differentiate a social threat and a physical threat. So when we persecute people, when we blame, when we shame, when we judge, and then they have a defensive reaction, and there are a lot of natural human defensive reactions. There's projection, there's avoid, right? Like there's all these known defensive reactions. And then we get mad at them for having a natural, often unconscious defensive reaction. Nope. Remember your common goal. They want to succeed too. How do I challenge us to figure out a solution, a way forward? Now, does that still mean that sometimes I have to go vent to somebody else on the side? Yes. We're human too, as challengers and persecutors, right? Like I can still be frustrated that something didn't get done or that we're part in this situation. I'm human too, but I need to release that before I'm trying to deal with the conflict or I'm going to cause a switch. Does that make sense? It is so much easier said than done. Especially when you're in that mode, as with many things in life, okay? So then we have, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so instead of the persecutor, be a challenger. Share. Instead of being a victim, be a creator. Now, in chat, what do you think the difference between a victim and a creator is? Create solutions. Perceive it as a chance to learn. Open for changes. I like these. Creates proposals. It doesn't mean that you're still not going to be embarrassed, hurt, frustrated. You're still human. You're still going to have emotional response. But when we get to a place that we feel like nothing matters, what's the point? Why bother? You're not going to get creative. You're not going to be innovative. You're not going to be a joy to be around. This is part of us having to go stop and say, my defensive reaction, right? When you hear the words, can I give you feedback? It activates the same part of your brain as seeing a bear in the woods. Okay? So if that's the case, I have to almost I have this what are they going to say? And then go, wait, this person doesn't want me to fail. This person isn't trying to just judge me. This person wants to work together with me. I almost have to start telling myself, I've given feedback to people and wasn't the evil person, right? So in some ways, the more that you learn how to give and be a challenger, the easier it is to become a creator because you stop seeing it as something you're doing wrong and something that is an opportunity. Now, I will say this, and I will also say there is I don't want to say cognitive load. That's probably the wrong term, but there's kind of a threshold. I saw somebody once put up on, it was in a keynote. They're another learning opportunity. There's almost I'm tired, especially in the agile space, everything I'm constantly growing, I'm constantly learning, and that's exhausting. So kind of understand that there are times that even when I have a good creator mindset, even when I have a good relationship with the challenger, there are times that my My brain is just a little more exhausted, and that emotional survival brain is just in full effect. Like I had somebody make a comment to me once, and it was the smallest piece of feedback. And I was just like, no, I do not accept this. Like I lost my mind in a reaction. And I was like, why am I so like, what is going on? It was just, I was exhausted. I was tired. My mind just couldn't process learning in that spot. And so there's sometimes that we have to think about as creators, giving ourselves a little self-care, a little grace, and understanding where we're at to be productive, to be creative, to be vulnerable. And then the last role, which is really going to get to the heart for many, many Scrum Masters, because we are very good in this spot, okay? Instead of the rescuer, to be the coach. Now, in chat, what is the difference between coach and rescuer? Provide guidance, encouraging, enable. Directions opens, puts up a mirror. Takes it straight. I like a lot of these. Okay. Doesn't solve it. So let me first, Jamie mentioned I do lots of different trainings. So this is a pet peeve of mine. So I said, I things I wish I knew and things I rant about. So you had to get at least one good rant in here. Okay. I had to have one. If I have a soapbox, imagine I'm getting on my soapbox right now. Okay. Many leaders are not taught how to lead knowledge workers. We're taught how to lead task-based workers. If you do not know what the difference between those two things, first of all, do not tell me who you got your CSM from, because I'll get upset. Second, please make that a conversation in this group, okay? But leaders were taught how to manage task workers and lead task workers. We were not taught how to lead knowledge workers. Agile came about and honestly, in my opinion, did a crappy job overall helping managers learn how to lead knowledge workers. In fact, in some cases, many of the messages, as being an executive attending Agile conferences early on, was get out of the way, you cause all of our problems. Which is not true. In addition, you cannot just magically become a self-organizing or self-managing team. You need a leader. But you need a leader that knows how to help enable that. Not in a rescuing way, but in a coaching way. Now, when I say coach, I'm going to do a couple things high level first. One is, if you tell your team they're empowered and have done nothing to actually empower them, shame on you. You are aiming a bus at them. You have to build two-way trust. You have to teach them skills and competency to be able to do the job. You have to mentor. You have to facilitate and make sure all the voices are being heard so that they are being collaborative. And you may need to coach. Coach is not providing an answer. Many people think of coach as like the professional, like a basketball coach. The basketball coach is often more of a trainer. They train and then they mentor while you're on the court. If I'm a leader acting as a coach, I am giving you no content knowledge whatsoever. I am helping you unlock from within yourself. Why is that beneficial? Yeah, I love it, Marco. Thank you you were the quickest, right? And Frederick jumped, right? The ownership. And that's how changing from rescuer to coach matters. As a rescuer, you're implying some judgment. You're taking a side. You're not being neutral. You might be doing it in a crappy way to both. But as a coach, you're highlighting this isn't about judgment, but let's figure out how to solve this. I'm going to do it transparently. Let's help us unlock. Let's help us come together. Let's help us see our shared goal. This takes skills. What I see happen often, Jamie, I'm actually going to have you do this real quick for me. Do you got a marker by you? I know you do because you're Jamie. I'm going to put something in chat for you to write down. You've seen me do this before. Okay. Make it big so that when you hold it up to the camera, when I tell you to, everybody can see it. Okay. Somebody that's on video willing to play a little small game with me. It's very easy. Anybody on camera willing to play a little game with me? I saw Bernardo first. Bernardo, can you unmute yourself for a second?
Sure.
Perfect. Okay, I have a deck of playing cards, like what you play euchre, rummy, spades with, okay? I have black cards, I've got red cards. Please pick.
Okay, let's go with the black.
Great, getting rid of those. That leaves you with diamond cards, heart cards. Please pick.
Heart.
Perfect. Face of heart cards or non-face of heart cards. Please pick.
Face it.
Face of heart. Great. Ace, king of hearts or queen, jack of hearts?
Queen.
Queen of hearts. Perfect. Jamie, show it. What did I just do?
I don't know. Try to lead me somehow, or
yeah, that's not
speak...
called leading. That's nice. I'm thankful that you're trying to be nice to me. It's not called leading.
Manipulating.
I manipulated the crap out of you. And if I could give you a sticker, I would, but I'm sorry. I please know I do with love, just to prove a point. Okay. Everybody give a round of applause there. I manipulated. That's not coaching. That's not leading. I had a solution in mind and I tricked you to it. So no matter what you said or didn't say, I was going to keep or get rid of until you got to the Queen of Hearts. That's not coaching. That's still rescuing. And we always know when we're being rescued. And how does it feel?
Well, I think sometimes people don't even realize that they are being manipulated, right?
Well, sometimes that's the case, Jamie, but more times than not, and I, as a former Scrum Master, current Scrum, I don't know, I will tell you this, it's hard for us to give up our expertise. It's hard for us to give up our control. And so when we're facilitating or we're coaching and the team does something, we're like, yeah, I knew you were going to get there. Like it just flies out of our mouth. Like we can't help it. And we just disempower. We just take away the ownership of what they just did because it's hard role. Being a good leader is sometimes really, really, really hard. So not only do we not teach leaders the skills that you need, if you do not know the difference between training, mentoring, facilitating, and coaching, start learning. And there's my dog. Sorry. Go, go, go. Okay, he's just going to stay there. I've decided his name is Jet, and he's just 1 year old. And I've decided I'm renaming his name to No Jet, because that's all I say all day long. It's just No Jet. Okay, so I can recommend things at the end if you want, or point things to, and it's not just pointing to my stuff. I can point you to other people's stuff. The dog will not be manipulated. That is true, Tom. But these are the skills you have to learn. In addition, as a leader, you also have to learn how to train, mentor, facilitate, and coach yourself. Meaning I started professionally speaking and this is an embarrassing thing that I would not have admitted until just recently, publicly. I always said when people are like, oh, why do you speak at conferences at the beginning, right? I'd be like, because I want to pay it forward. Bull. I started speaking back in 2005 because I wanted something to be about me. Because as a director of development, when I'm in my organization, it's always about the team. And I had to keep my mouth right. Like, and I was just like, no, it's the team. It's the team. And I'm still a human that needs recognition too. So I started speaking as a way to get some recognition. Now today it's 20, it's almost 15 years later. It's not about that. Now it really is about paying it forward. But that really wasn't the case at the beginning. That was just what I said. Now it's true. But at the beginning, it was a way for me to get recognition so that I didn't take it during and within the teams. These are the things. So not only do you have to learn new skills as leaders to create teams, but you also have to, sorry if you can hear my dogs right now, my husband is getting ready to leave and they're like trying to figure out if they get to go for a walk or not. So if you have the skills, but also your own confidence in your value that you are providing, not being just the expert. And that was a hard journey for me. And it is a hard journey for a lot of Scrum Masters, a lot of leaders in general. So we'll open it up for questions, but I'll leave you with this kind of question here as I prep this. And again, you feel free if you want to put this in chat or if you just want to write it next to your conflict that you had, go back to one of the conflicts you wrote down earlier that you identified in. And what is something that you want to do, that you want to try and go, that maybe you need to be a little bit more of the creator. Maybe you need to realize impact mattered and I have to go back. Like, what is it that you want to try and do? You can put it in chat or you can just write it down next to one of your conflicts. Thank you, Barbara, for being willing to own that. I appreciate that. Mad respect. Jet does need some teaching. Jet definitely was a COVID puppy purchase, or not purchase, we rescued, but Jet was definitely needs some teaching.
Shameless plug for Ignite. I have to point out that this was I had this marker.
And then with a little bit of time that we have left, I'll open it up for any questions. I am a walking Rolodex, which then somebody said, what's a Rolodex? And I felt very old. And I was like, I am a walking resource of conferences and books and courses and things. So podcasts, just I'm happy to point people to different things or answer any questions you might have.
How can I help my management to work together as a team and be vulnerable towards each other?
So this is one of the things that I like to point out is we tend to kind of give this impression that leaders are supposed to have all the answers and already always all skilled. But if I just got done saying most of us were not taught the right skills, guess what happened to most of your executives too? And so the reality is, and as a former executive myself, this is an honest truth. There are a lot more Scrum Master jobs than there are Director of Development jobs. And it is scary when I have to support my family, when I'm, you know, like responsible for things, to then have to go, wait, I'm not doing my job well. and I've got to learn whole new skills. It gets scarier to do that. Now, if you've got really great leaders, they're willing to, right? And they'll do it just like I did. But but here's the thing is how can you approach them in a way that's collaborative, not judgmental? And so, and actually believe that they can do it, right? And not just that they're in your way. And giving them and starting to think about what's their motivation. What are the problems they're facing that they want solutions on? And if you can align the things that you're trying to do with those problems, you're going to have a little bit more of a thing. So let me give an example of one where, you know, oftentimes people are like, well, when the executive comes in the meeting, they take over the meeting and everybody, you know, like we can't do anything and stuff. And they won't stop coming. Like that's a really common problem that a lot of people have. And so I'm like, well, when you talked with that executive is my first question. And they're always like, well, I haven't. Well, that's starter. Okay.
Yeah.
2 is when you talked with them, what are they trying to get when they do it? What benefits are they gaining when they do it? Maybe they're feeling insecure about different things. Maybe they feel the weight of responsibility and that this is the only way they feel they can get control. Maybe they just want one specific piece of information that you could be giving them in a different way. But if we never ask what they're trying to achieve, we don't know alternative solutions to provide. And most of us believe that they're like, we have this reaction, right? Our perception is that they're just trying to make my life miserable. I've never sat in an executive meeting where we went, how do we screw with people today? Like that has never, ever happened. There's usually some kind of goal that they're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And more specifically, like just if I can have another 2 minutes, there's a few of them and they don't work together. And so the whole organization is kind of, not together.
One of my favorite books for that, and I literally have handed it to a CEO, is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And I've handed it to a CEO. And the reason I like that book for that dynamic is because we don't often think about what our primary team is versus our secondary team. And many executive teams do not act like a high performing team, or senior leadership teams or other teams in the organization either. I have a question from Victor. I do like Bernardo. Yes, you do not. And I am very good at poker too. And I will toot my own horn on that one. I have no problem admitting that. Can you, I'm having Vegas withdrawal, honestly. Can you recognize manipulation before reacting to it? I don't actually, I would imagine yes. But I think it's different based on people's social and emotional intelligence, the relationship with those individuals and the situation they're in. I can quickly notice when I'm being manipulated, except by people I trust. The minute I trust you, I actually don't catch it as quickly because I have the prime directive and but I also tend to try and remember that most manipulation isn't intentionally evil. They, again, believe that they're trying to do something to help you and maybe just de-skilled. Other questions? How can I practice being in conflict to then adjust if conflict is very low due to our team's high agreeableness? So there is Thomas Kilman has a model called the conflict response model. If you look up that and use that in a retro to talk about how people respond to conflict. And one of the modes that people can respond to conflict is accommodating. And what I would do in that situation is during the retro, I would be asking questions like, what happens if we have a team that competes as our conflict? You know, what happens if we have a team that only accommodates? And let them start exploring the dangers of accommodating and that it's not helping their team be really collaborative and productive. But I would use that model as a base to help them have that discussion. Where's the line between asking leading questions and manipulating your team? Leading questions are manipulative. Sorry. If you have a leading question, so let's unpack that. I know you probably didn't like my answer for that, but at the end of the day, if I have to do training because you do not know something, do training. If you don't know something, right, then leading them is still manipulating them versus, and guess what? Maybe you're wrong. Maybe the Queen of Hearts isn't the right answer. I shouldn't be coding anymore. But sometimes I get stuck in old knowledge that makes me think I know the solution. And so I think I'm just asking leading questions, but I'm not training or I'm not mentoring, and people don't like it. So ask more genuine, curious questions and be surprised by what your team is capable of. You don't need to lead like that. Lead by asking questions and engaging them, not by trying to get them to a solution. And here's how I remember to do this more. It doesn't matter how efficient we are if we are not effective. And so often when I want to ask leading questions, it's because I'm trying to get someplace fast. But if the only way to get there fast is create a dependency on me, I'm not creating an effective team. Do we have time for more, Jamie? Where are we at?
Yep, we have 15 minutes left.
Oh, okay, cool. Star, how can I set an expectation for a new team? How can I set an expectation? I need a little bit more, sorry. A new expectation of conflict, I'm not sure where you're going. Can you add a little bit more? I'll come back to it after I'll look down and somebody else answered the Thomas thing. Nice quote, Tricia, can you let me know? So can you let them know I'm going to ask a few leading questions? You can, they're going to get annoyed by you because if you did that to me, here's what I would respond. If you already have the answer, would you just tell me? You're toying with me. I don't want to be toyed with. I'm a grown adult. So if your then response to that is, but I'm trying to teach you, then teach me. Star, I'm seeing if I've got a little bit more for your question. I still don't yet. Anybody else want to try and take a guess on that one? Star still here? When we have the hat on of a facilitator, could we also manipulate them? No. So if you are a facilitator or you're acting as a facilitator, you are neutral. So there is no manipulation. The minute you stop being neutral, you stop being a facilitator. So no, unless you stop being a facilitator. When I do that, like when I'm a leader and I'm facilitating a meeting and I'm trying to remain neutral, but I realize that they don't have a key piece of information, there are different techniques. Like in person, you can draw a little box in the corner of the room and then walk over to the box and say, okay, this is Tricia as the director of development. Here, this is what you absolutely need to know. And I'm almost directing in that moment. And then I step back out. But then it's a very clear visible as to when I'm doing one or not. Remotely, I've seen people do a hat and they put on a hat. But understand that every time as a leader, when I step out of facilitator mode, I take a little bit of ownership, which may be okay. And it may be exactly what you need to do. Star, I just saw your answer. I'll come back to that because I'm going to build off of Tom and then I'll come back to yours for a second. But how can you ever really be neutral? So Tom, here's my answer to that, because I do get a lot of people that are just external coaches and facilitators, and they're like, no, you're just neutral. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's lovely. You've never actually been a practitioner. I have been a practitioner in many different roles where I've tried to be a leader as a trainer, leader as a coach, those are skills I use as a leader. But I still have accountability as a whole for the team and the results. My key thing here is it's not about whether or not I'm being the expert. It's going back to that efficient and effective. My job as a leader, my definition of leadership is helping people to become what they can be. I don't have any part of my definition about customer delivery. Why? Who owns customer delivery? Yes, I love it, Daniel, because the team delivers the product. My job as a leader is to focus on the team and helping the team take ownership of that deliverable. If I have and treat it like both, that I've got to be, then that will cause me to stop being neutral on a more consistent basis, because I will justify why I have to step in, which will take away the ownership from them. Let me give you a quick example, and then I'm going to go do Star's question. I had a lead developer from Caterpillar once ask me, my team is not stepping up. They're not doing anything. I have to do everything. I'm like, okay, well, who decides what's going to get worked on in the task? Well, I do, because we have to get it done and we have a short period of time. Okay. Who estimates it? I do, because I have the most knowledge and it's just faster. Who follows up with the client? Well, I do, because, you know, we can't have everybody talking. Like every question I asked, it was him, with always a reason why they didn't have time. Who felt ownership? Him or his team? He did. So who goes above and beyond? He does. His team may feel loyalty to him, but not for the delivery. And this is one of the biggest pitfalls leaders get into. Shit. Today is just going to be a day. I'm telling you right now. And I closed the door. He's figured out how to open it. It's fantastic. So there's an element, and that is a leading question. Yes, you are right. But I am training. I am not leading. I love it. You might become my favorite person. But like, that's the dynamic of it is my responsibility as a scrum master, as a leader, is helping my team collaborate and work together and take ownership. And it's hard when I have expertise and knowledge. I own this. I am not judging you right now. I have taken a keyboard from somebody and coded a database schema because they said they couldn't. Not my finest moment, people. Okay? But I've done it. It's hard. But every time I did those things meant they felt loyalty to me, not ownership. So back to Star's question. I just saw an introduction to conflict resolution. So let me go back to the first part of it. How can I set an expectation for a new team? So I like, Scrum doesn't highlight any of these things, but either use your retros as sometimes a like lunch and learn or do actual lunch and learns. There are so many things that if you just go through the motions of Scrum, I'm sorry, we're doing a daily Scrum, check. We're doing sprint planning, check. But as a Scrum Master, I'm never teaching my team concepts that they need to better work together. Multitasking, conflict, collaboration, technical excellence. There are a lot of things as a Scrum Master I have to teach my team so that they can understand and better have shared language, understanding of what's happening. I teach my team about bias. I teach my team about inclusivity. I teach my team about so many things that are nothing to do with your product backlog item template. Honestly, if those are the only things you focus on and you do them perfectly, you will still not get the full benefits of Scrum, because you will not ever achieve the high performing team. And that is the benefits of Scrum, is creating a container where you can discover value collaboratively together. If you don't do the last part, you can't discover value. And those concepts are not in the Scrum guide. Those are what you as a Scrum Master have to be helping the team with. So I do a lot of book clubs. I do a lot of lunch and learns. We read things like Speed of Trust. We read, right? Like they would often laugh because I would go to a conference or a training and I would come back and they're like, oh, Conference Tricia's back, because I would be like, oh, and we got to learn about responsibility and we got to learn about, right? But there's all these concepts that you might know, which is what causes you to not want to be neutral, that you need to be teaching your teams. And then this last question from Sarah, what advice would you give a new Scrum Master? What skills should be developing to add value to the team? So kind of everything I've been talking a lot about, Star. So if you are an expert Scrum Master that's struggling with like giving up being the hub, what I call the hub, meaning the dependency is completely on you here. And if you don't know if this is the truth or not, here's your challenge. And this challenge was done to me. There was a Agilist who's now retired named Pollyanna Pixton, that I'm not making this up. That was her name. And she was amazing. She was so direct. You think I'm direct? Oh my God. I am nothing in comparison to her. And she challenged me one day and she said, Tricia, go an entire day without answering a question. Anybody want to guess how many questions I got in before I broke? I made 3. The trick here isn't whether or not you answer questions. Is that your only mode to help the team? Or are you doing other things? And for me, that helped me to see that that was a dependency I was creating. If that's not your challenge, but you're having a hard time with the team understanding things or retaining things, learn some training skills. If you're having a lot of behavioral issues in the team, learn some facilitation skills. That would probably be the easiest way for me to answer that in a summarized way, I think. So those questions were all over the map. So I hope they were helpful for people. And we'll take, I don't want to leave Victor hanging. So let's take this last one. And then are there more resources about addressing conflict without becoming the roles of things? So there are more resources for conflict. I'm trying to think of books right now that I would recommend. If other people have a book recommendation, please put it in. Why am I blanking on other conflict books right now? The books that most people reference are like Crucial Conversation, Nonviolent Conversation, Fierce Conversations, Radical Candor. Those tend to be books about how to communicate in conflict. And so there are a number of those that are out there. My favorite out of all of those is really Fierce Conversations, if I had to pick just one. My best learning book right now, and I'm telling you, like this, I actually would have figured out a way to make this book come up in here because I am doing a second book club on this book because I love it so much, is Think Again by Adam Grant. A Hub Online, yes. And just so you know how much I love this book, like, I don't know if this will show. Can you see how many churned pages are in that thing? Like, there's so many churned pages. I'm just going to reread it again and again. Thank you, Kate. I love it. And I have not read fully Noise. I've skimmed it, but I have to own I have not fully read it yet. Thank you, Kate. That's a great suggestion and added with it. A hub online that you can initially learning one or multiple of these skills. Feel free to email me. I mean, I do have a blog. I don't like pointing. See, I don't like the bio and I don't like pointing to my stuff at the end either. So like, I do have a blog. I do have a website and things like that. But if you email me, and I'll put my email address. Oh, actually, let me put the PDF in here, and I'll also give it to Jamie so she can email it out or whatever afterwards. You can email me, and if you email me, I will respond. Jamie can attest to this with like, I'll point you to different instructors. I'll sometimes point you away from certain instructors. I have been known to do that. I will be honest about it. It's not about me necessarily. I don't do many public things, so it's not an issue in that regard. But I will also put my email in here, at least the short version one, that you can email me if there's a specific training or podcast or things that you're interested in. My favorite podcast is actually for Agile is Ryan Ripley's. I can't remember the name of it though right now. Which Ryan would get mad at me for that, but I honestly can't remember the name of it right this moment. Maybe, I don't know. Is that the name of his, is it Agile for Humans?
The name of his organization?
Oh, that's his org, okay.
Oh, for his book is called Fixing Your Scrum.
Yeah, yeah. Which I have not read that book yet either. My book list gets really big. I can't. I just have to read it before I see Ryan next. That's my goal. So I'm appreciating not seeing anybody right now. I'm trying to catch up.
She's hiding. She's hiding from them.
I'm trying to catch up. I just got through team topologies. I'm reading Kareem's book right now, The 6 Enablers to Business Agility. So I'm trying to catch up. Well, thank you. And I appreciate everybody taking the time. I put the PDF into chat. And I appreciate having me. Thank you, Jamie and Mark and Katrin, for hosting this and creating this space for others. This is wonderful.
Thank you so much, Tricia. We really appreciate your time and your willingness to share with us. It's always a hoot. And I'm glad you broke out the Queen of Hearts. I was waiting for the horse rider thing to come out too. But...
Yeah, that one's more complicated to do on the fly.
Yes, it was a great session. And thanks to everyone for coming. We'll post the recording on YouTube for later. And then Tricia will send me anything else if we have any other artifacts from this meeting that we could send out to you. Look for an upcoming email coming from the Meetup account itself. Again, thanks everyone for coming. And Tricia, thank you again.
Always.
We so appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.